and welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. Today we are so excited to be introducing our Build a Campsite die. This die is so much fun. It's got this cute little tent and all these fun accessories. So let's go ahead and check it out. Here is a look at all of the pieces included in this die set. There are a ton of different things, so let's see how these all layer. First, we're going to take a look at the tent, and there are 3 layers to the tent. So we've got the base layer, and then this kind of main tent piece, and then this extra added detail. And this is really fun to play with colors of cardstock and also pattern papers too. The tent has 2 little kind of strings coming out the sides, and you can use those little pieces there as stakes so that they're nice and secure into the ground. And I think it's such a fun, cute little added detail that makes a card really special. Next up, we have these 2 cute little trees, and these little rectangles here are the tree trunks. So these will help you set the scene for your tent and campsite. Next up, we have our fire. So we've got our logs here, and then the main flame piece, and then the next piece that you layer over it. And these are really fun out of glitter cardstocks because it gives it this really cool flame look. Then after that, we have this adorable lantern. It's one of my favorite parts of the whole set, and this is a 3-layer piece as well. So you've got the base that's going to kind of light up the flame. You've got the interior part to the lantern, and then you can layer the lantern, actual lantern, on top of all of that. There's a fun little grass piece that you can add around the tent or around the trees. And then this part is so cute. It's this little camp sign. So we've got 2 layers. There's the plain sign and then the little camp letters you can die cut out of it. And then you can layer that behind and then attach it to this pole just like that. You can also use the sign without the words camp, and you could stamp your own thing in there or add some little decoration or something to it too. So that's kind of fun. I think it'd be cute to put someone's name in it if this was like a birthday card or something like that. And so here is a look at all of the pieces layered together, and now we're going to create some super cute cards with this adorable die set.
So I'm going to use the new More the Merrier stamp set along with the new Build a Campsite die set to create a fun slimline camping scene. I've already colored and cut out my images from the stamp set that I plan to use. I've also already gone and cut out some of the images from the die set, but not quite all because I'm going to show you what I want to do with the tent for this card. But first, I'm going to use the largest of my slimline stitched rectangles and cut some 12 by 12 pattern paper for my sky and my ground. So I've cut some blue spiffy speckles for the sky and some green watercolor wishes for the ground, and I'm going to be using that grassy border as well. But first, I'm going to go ahead and cut out my tent, and I just thought it would be really fun to have a colorful plaid tent. I mean, who doesn't want a colorful plaid tent when you're camping? So here's my tent, and I'm actually not going to use the flaps that go on this. I'm just going to use it just as it is so you see a whole lot of that plaid. And then I've cut the background piece from some speckled eggshell. I'm cutting that grassy border, slimline border, and then now I'm going to make my little camp sign. So I've cut out 2 of these signs. One's from some light brown woodgrain cardstock, and the other is from some storm cloud, which is a dark gray. And then I'm going to use the little die in the die set that says camp and cut out the words out of that wood grain. That's going to be the front, and then you're going to see that storm cloud through the letters. Once I've got that cut out, I'm just going to add a few dots of glue and layer these 2 pieces together. And you can leave it just as it is if you want. You could also glue the letters down versus doing the negatives like I'm doing. But I also wanted to take the detail of putting the tiny little pieces back in the middle of the P and the middle of the A. These are super small, so you really don't have to do this. You can still read the word camp just fine without doing this little detail, but it does add a little bit more definition to those letters. So now I can assemble my fire. For this one, I cut both of the flames out of some glitter cardstock, so it's shimmery like a fire. I also did the same for the flame that is going to be inside my lantern. And then the logs I've cut from some ground coffee cardstock. For the post that my sign goes on, that is cut from some chocolate bar cardstock, so it's just another shade of brown. And then for the lantern, I've cut that solid piece that's going to be the flame from some orange glitter cardstock, so you get the same shimmer that we have for the flames of the fire. I've got some shimmery yellow for that piece that the flames cut out of, which is going to be inside of the lantern. And then the lantern itself is cut from some black cardstock. So I'm just going to layer all those pieces together. So now all my pieces that go in my camp are assembled. I can go ahead and put that grassy border hill on the bottom of my panel. And then for my tent, I'm actually going to pop up the front with some thin foam squares onto that background piece. So it'll just have a little bit of definition from the back and a little bit of depth to the tent. I'm adding my camp sign to the right side of my card, so it's pointing towards my tent. And then before I get too far in assembling things, I want to put this onto a card base. So this is a slimline card base that's 8.5 by 3.5. So now I can figure out where I want all my pieces to go, but before I glue them all down, I am going to stamp my sentiment. I did decide that this was going to be a pretty full scene, so I'm not going to bother with the tent strings or the tent stakes on this one. So I'm just going to trim those off. The tent looks good with or without those little details. They were going to get covered up by everything else on this, so I didn't feel the need to keep them there. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment before I assemble all these pieces. This sentiment says everything is more fun with friends, and I've just lined it up in my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp it in black ink directly onto that background paper. Now I can start to assemble some things. I'm going to start with my fire here in the center, and then I'm going to put my little critters beside it with some foam squares. So I've got that cute little fox, and then I have this owl, and then I'm actually going to add some sticks with marshmallows to their hands so they look like they are roasting their marshmallows over that sparkly fire. And I realized he's kind of a little bit too close, so I should have actually added his stick to his hands before I stuck him down, but I can easily just pop him off and scooch him over. My glue wasn't quite dry, so now that that s'more is in his hands, he's scooted over to the right a little bit more. I'm not going to have that problem with my owl. I've got him in a good place. And then I'm going to have the little hedgehog. He's going to be out in front of the tent with the guitar leaning against the other side of the tent. So I'll add that tent directly to that background panel, now that I know kind of where it needs to go. And then I can add some foam squares to my hedgehog as well as my little guitar. And then I'll do the same to the lantern. Since that tent is already on some foam, I'm just going to glue it directly to the edge of the tent. So there are some little rectangular pieces in this die set, and those are meant to be trunks for the trees. So I'm just gluing those to the back of my trees. My trees are cut from some rainforest cardstock, and these trunks are cut from some chocolate bar cardstock. And then I'm just going to tuck those behind my tent to kind of fill in that background space and complete this scene. So I've got two small ones and one big one. And then I felt like my hedgehog needed to be part of the marshmallow roasting fun, so I gave him a little s'more that's part of that stamp set, so he had a snack to munch on over here by the tent. And here is my finished card. I really love that sparkly campfire and that plaid tint is just too fun. For this card, I'm going to use the new Build a Campsite die set along with the Sleepy Bears from Den Sweet Den. They just fit perfectly in this tent, and I just think they are so adorable sleeping inside. But first, I need to create my background. So I've cut a piece of blue Jay cardstock using the largest stitched rectangle die. So this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it's going to cover a card base. And then I am using some gold metallic watercolors, and I'm using 2 of the shades that you see there in that color palette so that I have some variation in my splatters, and I'm creating stars on this night sky. So this is a really easy way to create a night sky using just a dark colored piece of cardstock and some gold watercolor. I'm also flicking it off the side of this block so that I can get some really tiny splatters as well, and I have lots of variation in the sizes of these stars. So I can set that aside to dry, and then I'm using a piece of noble fir cardstock for the ground, and I'm going to stamp and emboss my sentiment along the bottom. I'm using the sentiment from the Love You S'more stamp set, which is actually an older stamp set, and this says everything is s'more fun with you. I just love the fonts in this particular stamp set. So I'm going to line that up in my Misty, pick it up with the door. I'm going to add some anti-static powder to that green cardstock. I'm going to use some clear embossing ink and stamp that down right on that dark cardstock. And then I'll add my white embossing powder, so that's going to stick to where I stamped. I'll tap off the excess, and then I'll use my heat tool to melt that powder so we get that nice bright white sentiment on that dark green cardstock. I stamped my sentiment first, and then I'm going to die cut the top once I figure out how high up I need to die cut that. But first I'm going to do a little assembly of my tint. So I've got some canned pumpkin, that's that darker orange, and then some fake tan, and this is the front of that tint. And for the inside I'm using some number 2 pencil cardstock, so this is a darker yellow. But I want the little tint strings to be black, so I'm just coloring those with my Copic marker so that they are black. And then I'm going to add some liquid glue, and I'm just adding it to the edges. I'm not adding it to the flaps of the tint because I'm going to take that sleepy bear and tuck him inside. So I want to have some space to be able to tuck him behind that orange front of the tent. So he's kind of got his backside in the tent and then his head out so he can, keep an eye on what's happening. And then here's my little fire that is part of that die set. I cut the back piece from some fake tan, and then I cut that smaller piece from some red glitter cardstock, which I just think is fun. And then of course the logs are cut from some woodgrain cardstock actually. So I've assembled my fire, and then I'm going to assemble my little lantern here. I'm putting that solid orange piece behind the die cut yellow piece so you get that orange flame. That yellow piece is actually some shimmer cardstock. And then the lantern itself I've cut from some storm cloud cardstock, so it's a nice dark gray. Now that I've got my sentiment cut and I kind of know where my pieces are going to go and how much space I need, I can cut the top of it with that simple stitched hillside. And I'm going to go ahead and put that onto my card panel. Just lining it up right along the bottom. I cut this piece with that same stitched rectangle that background piece is cut with, so I have that stitching on the top and the sides and the bottom as well. I'm going to use some foam squares for my tent so it pops up just a little bit off that background. And then the little tent stakes, I'm going to put those behind the tent strings. So I'm going to tuck it behind. I did not glue down the tent strings. And then what I'm going to do, once I have both of these tucked behind there, I'm going to actually put a tiny dot of glue on the back of the tent strings and glue that directly to the tent stakes. And I'm just going to use my tweezers to push those together. I'll do the same thing on the other side. And you'll actually see, I'm going to pop those up here in just a bit because I decided I wanted some trees back there, but no worries, it was easy to fix. I've added my fire with some foam to pop up into the foreground, and then I'm going to add some foam to my little sleepy bear. He's outside the tent having a nap, and I'll add a foam to my lantern as well. So these are all in front of the tent. And then I decided I wanted to add some trees behind the tent, tucked behind the tent. So this is where I'm going to take my tweezers and carefully pull up that tent stake. It only had a little bit of glue, so it's easy to do. And it's going to get glued right back down to the tree. This one was down a little bit more, so I had to use my craft knife to pull it up. So the trees are also from the Build a Campsite die set, and I have just cut them from some cilantro cardstock. And I'm just going to tuck those small trees on the far edge, and this actually makes it to where you can see those tent stakes a little better because you have that lighter colored cardstock behind it. So you can actually see those details even better with these trees. And then I'll just put a dot of glue back behind there and glue that tent stake back down to the front of that tree. And then I use the larger tree beside the smaller tree. And since this tent is up on some foam, I did not have any problems tucking those trees behind. If I had, I could have easily popped up those pieces of foam and just tucked those trees in there and stuck it back down. So I'm also going to use the moon and the stars from the forest backdrop die set, and I'm using some yellow shimmer cardstock to cut out the moon and the stars, and I'll just add those with some glue directly to that card base up in the sky. I'm also going to add those 3 little stars just with some tiny dots of glue. And then my card is all finished, and I just love those sweet little bears camping out under the stars.
These 2 cards are so gorgeous, Shari, and I was so excited to recreate a card by Elena for the next card, and we're going to be using the forest backdrop. So the Build a Campsite die and the forest backdrop die were designed to work together, so they're a really great and nice match. And Elena did something kind of fun with this forest backdrop die. She actually cut the trees off to have it be more of like a window opening, so you can use it with the trees, with the tent, or in this case, we're going to use it without the trees. And I'll show you how we cover up kind of the messy looking part of the die in just a little bit. So I'm going to trim those trees out, and then we're going to go ahead and start working on the tent. And I love building these tents. I love all of these build the dies because it almost feels like paper dolls, like you're just going to layer everything on top of each other. So we're going to start off with the base of the tent, and that's in some orange cardstock, and here we're going to use some of the textured dot cardstock to layer it on top. So it's all going to be orange, but that textured dot is going to give it a little extra detail. And then the flaps of the tent we'll do in that same orange that we have the base. We're going to cut the camp sign there out of some vanilla malt cardstock, and then we're going to use the camp words and we're going to die cut that from the sign. So I'm just going to hold those in place with some Post-it note tape and run it through the die cut machine, and now I've got that cute little camp sign, which is so sweet. And then we're going to go ahead and die cut the base of it in some ground coffee cardstock so that we'll have that nice dark brown, and then some paper bag for the stake. And then we're going to do those little stakes there that are going to hold our tent in place out of that same dark brown cardstock. Now it's time to start layering everything together, and I'm just going to do that with some tape runner. Liquid glue would be great too. That just happened to be what was next to me on my desk, and I'm going to layer this little orange piece right on top. I just love that detail. And then I'm going to add the stakes to those little strings that come off of the base with just a little drop of liquid glue, and I'm going to attach those right on there. Next, we're going to work on the camp sign. So I'm going to layer that cream colored piece there, the vanilla mart, on top of the dark brown cardstock. We're just going to layer those together, and that's going to help fill in the letters. And I think it looks really cute like this, but I also like to fill in the centers of the letters too. I'm going to show you a little trick for that. So I'm going to attach it first to the post. And then I'm going to take my die here, and actually the little centers for the A and the P, they stayed inside my die, and that'll most likely happen. So I'm going to actually add a drop of glue to the base there, and then I'm just going to fit that die in and then just poke the center of the A through with my tweezers or a pokey tool, and that's actually going to put the A in perfect placement. And this is a great tip to do with any letter dies that have letters like A's and P's and R's, etc., that have centers. You can just leave the centers in the die, add your drop of glue, and then fit the die in like a little puzzle and just poke those pieces out. Super quick and easy. Now for the ground, we're going to be using the new Watercolor Wishes rainbow paper, and I'm going to use the 12 by 12 paper, and I'm going to use that color down there, and I love it so much because it looks like I ink blended it, but I didn't. It just looks amazing with that texture. I always like to cut my hills bigger than what I need, and then I kind of see how things are going to look. I'm trying to place my tent and kind of see. Once I see about the height, I make a pencil line and then just trim off the excess, and that gives me a lot of options of how I'm going to create my scene. Now, I wanted to create kind of like a galaxy sky, but I wanted it to be easy. So I got some blue Jay cardstock and some distress oxides in black soot, chip sapphire, and wilted violet. The chip sapphire ended up not being dark enough, so I just used the black soot and the wilted violet. And honestly, it looks so cool. And I did it really messy. I didn't really worry about how it blended. I just did splotches of the color to give kind of that galaxy look. You could bring in some reds and yellows for even more of a dramatic kind of galaxy feel. But since this was a camping scene, I didn't want to get too crazy. If it was a space scene, I would have added all the colors. So it's a great way to do it because the oxides are going to sit on top of your colored cardstock and really give a cool look. So it's a quick and easy galaxy sky. And then the trick to the galaxy sky is, of course, to splatter white ink paint on it. So here I'm using some Copic white paint, but you could use any kind of acrylic paint. I watered it down a little bit, and then I'm just tapping my paintbrush to create splatters. And I mean, oh my gosh, it's so pretty. I love how that turned out. So I'm going to add some tape runner to my backdrop scene here and layer that over my grass. And then I'm going to start to form the scene. So I'm going to layer my tent there into the center. And then I'm going to be taking out my Den Sweet Den stamp set, which is so super cute. And these bears were actually sized to also fit in this Build a Campsite tent because they look quite adorable in this guy. So I'm going to stamp, color, and die cut some bears from this. And you'll see I started layering the bear behind, and then I realized that there wasn't enough shadow or contrast in the background because all of the oranges were a little too similar. You can see at the top there I had tried to ink blend some ink. It didn't look quite right. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to take a dark orange marker and just add some detail just like this where it's going to show through on the tent. And I don't really need to worry about how it looks because it's going to be just a very small area. So I just scribbled some orange on there and it worked great. So I'm going to layer my little bear there with the tent. So I'm going to layer him behind so it looks like he's kind of peeking out. And then his little guy there is going to lay on top there, the little baby bear, which is so cute. To give some extra dimension, I went ahead and took a little foam square and put it behind the tent flap there so that it's going to look nice and 3D. So I'm going to add that on there, and then you'll see I'm going to layer that on top of the bear. And so it just gives a little extra something. And then I'll put foam squares over the whole back of that and layer that on the tent. So it really gives a kind of a 3D look and really looks like there's just a shadow behind them in the base of the tent. I have a standard size card base here at 5.5 by 4.25. I'm going to add some tape runner to that and layer on that cool galaxy sky that we worked on. And then we're going to be layering this whole scene together, and you'll see how beautiful this looks. I love doing nighttime scenes and daytime scenes with this tent. Both look so super cute. So I added a bunch of foam tape to the back. It's kind of some thinner foam tape. That way I didn't have too much pop on my card. And oh my goodness, look how pretty that is. So now it's time to decorate, and we're going to take out the S'more the Merrier stamp set and bring in a lot of these accessories from it. I love this stamp set because, of course, it's so cute to use the critters in the set, but all of those s'more accessories are really perfect for combining with other stamp sets too. Now I went ahead and kind of shopped my stash, and Elena is famous for this. She looks around for the perfect elements in my stash. So I looked for some grasses and pulled out butterfly kisses, and then Upon a Star I think is a great match for this tent and forest backdrop too. So I went ahead and stamped and colored one of the constellations from that, and now we can start to form the scene. So we're going to put things behind and in front of that hill to create lots of dimension. We're also going to take out one more stamp set. This is Mom Puffs Me. It's got this cute tiny little owl in it, so we're going to use that guy. Any cute little critter would be perfect for this. And now we're going to start layering in some of these fun S'more the Merrier elements. So we have the marshmallows and the campfire and the little marshmallow on the stick. Once again, it's just so cute and sweet. And you can see that that area where we trimmed off those trees, we're covering that up with our stamped and die cut elements. So it's another way to use the forest backdrop. I love it with the trees. It's one of my favorite new dies, but I think it's really fun fun to be able to get a different use out of the same die, and it has a really different look when you take the trees off of it. So here I started layering some pieces. I was trying to use the rock from Some More the Merrier, but it wasn't quite big enough, so took some rocks out from Christmas Fishes. Once again, it's like just look through your stash and see your little kind of scene building elements. We're going to layer those on there. Once again, just trying to cover up that area where we cut off the tree part. So it's just such a fun way to get another use out of your dies. But of course, that tent does fit perfectly with the trees there too, and it looks super, super cute. Now, it's almost Father's Day, so I wanted to make a Father's Day card for my husband. It's going to be technically his second Father's Day because our son was born in May, so I'm pretty excited about this. So I went ahead and stamped Happy Father's Day from the Happy, Happy, Happy stamp set. I love that stamp set because it's just a great general sentiment set. I die cut it with a sentiment banner, and I'm going to layer that right onto the bottom of this card and then just trim off the excess for my sentiment. And I think that just finishes up the card and makes it look so super cute. I can't wait to give him this card this weekend. It's so fun. The other thing I love about this card is that you could do so many different sentiments with it. It really could be any kind of card for somebody who loves camping and loves the outdoors. This tent is so much fun to use, and next up from the design team, we have some gorgeous cards. So we're going to take a look back at the cards that Shari made earlier in the video. I love the tent cut out of pattern paper. I think it looks so cute. And this little scene here, the night sky and bears, is so super cute and sweet. Next up, Grace used these awesome tents on a slimline card, and I love how they're kind of flanking the two sides and how she brought in lots of different characters around the campfire. So fun and so sweet. I love how so many stamp sets work so great with these cute little tents. Next up, Megan got super creative and realized that the tent is a really great fit for the center picture window card. And so it's this great 3D tent with that super cute Screen Time kid inside, and they're a perfect match for this tent too. Here's the beautiful card by Elena that inspired me to make mine today. Thank you for such a gorgeous card, Elena. And then this scene by Mindy is so sweet. I love that she has the tent off to the side and that she cut off part of the tent. It really makes a really cute and fun scene with these adorable bears. And then this card by Letitia is so fun. I love her blue and how she layered all of these different trees on top in her spooky night sky. So fun and so beautiful. And then this card here is so much fun. I love the mountain stencil in the background. It's a great match for our adorable tent. And then here we've got that tent with the forest backdrop as well, using our watercolor, which is brand new paper, rainbow paper, in the background with that super cute textured dot tent. And then Lynette made this adorable card. The Into the Woods paper is a perfect match for this stamp set, and I just love this sweet scene. And I just adore Maureen's scene here. I love her stenciled mountains and grass and the super cute bears everywhere. And I love that the Den Sweet Den bear can hold the guitar from Some More the Merrier. It's so fun and so awesome. And we just can't wait to see what you guys create with this die set. So make sure to share it with us. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye.